how are you? I hope you're well. Let me try to silence my phone for this. It goes bananas right when I get on a Zoom call. Yes, I'm loving the faces, yo. It's good to see everyone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well. I'm still sucking air, so it's a good day. I figured if air goes in, it's probably going to go out. At least that's what respiratory physiology says. When you actually get into second semester, you'll figure out that the diaphragm, once it goes up, it will go down. And so therefore, we're in good stead. We got a couple more minutes before I kind of jump into things. But if you haven't looked, I put an important link, a URL in the chat box. It's a book that's written by the National Board of Medical Examiners, and it is a book on how medical faculty are supposed to write multiple choice questions so that they look and act and feel like a step one. Sure, I could try posting it again. You can't see it in the chat box for some reason? Huh. Sorry about that. How's that? All right, cool. So let me see here. I'm getting emails. Sorry, y'all.
Recording in
All right, so hopefully that is it, and I have responded to everyone. I'm trying to multitask, so I apologize. I'm not trying to be rude here. Well, first off, welcome to medical school. Welcome to AUA. Grateful to have you all here. Really appreciate it. And I'm hoping that you're enjoying your first couple days on the island and your first couple days of starting to drink through the fire hose. Learning objectives are going to come fast and furious, yo, so hang on. We might have started off really slow, but it's going to pick up pretty quickly. If you have not looked, also just let's practice some good online etiquette. And if you are not talking, try muting your microphone. And then when you want to talk, unmute your microphone and let's have a chat. This is not supposed to be just a lecture, but this is supposed to be an opportunity for everybody to have a conversation, really. If you're new to the, Lauren, great to see you. Glad you jumped on. If you're new or just logged in, I'm putting up a link that you should probably go to and download. It's a book put out by the National Board of Medical Examiners that teach faculty how to write multiple choice questions. All right. So we're just going to kind of get to it. I think one of the things that I want to do is I want to talk to you about who the heck am I and why am I sending you thousands of emails asking you to sign up for this free thing called Real, and what qualifies me as somebody that I should even be talking to you, right? Like, who the heck am I? Well, you probably saw I got a few initials after my name, but really what makes me qualified is I've been a medical educator for about 20-something years, and that really actually doesn't qualify me. What qualifies me is that I recently decided that I didn't know if I was a good educator. I've been teaching in medical education for about 20 years, and I asked the question of, do I have any data to show whether or not I'm a good educator? right? Like that should be an easy question to answer, shouldn't it? Could everybody mute unless they're actually going to talk, please? I appreciate it. Amira, would you mind muting real quick? Thank you. Appreciate it. So, so here I am about 5 years ago, and I'm sitting at AUA, and I asked myself this crazy question, whether or not I have data to show if I'm effective at teaching. And I'll tell you that I had no data. And I will argue with any professor anywhere on the planet if they have data to show whether or not they're an effective teacher. Now, we have these things called learning management systems, right? You guys logged into one. It's called Blackboard. And they call it a learning management system. So therefore, I must be able to get data on whether or not you're learning something, right? Like if I put up a PowerPoint or a lecture, I should be able to download some data to say whether or not you individually learned something from whatever I put on that system. I'm here to tell you that there is no data coming from those systems. So here I am really frustrated with these learning management systems. And I'm asking myself a question: how do I know I'm a good teacher? Because I'll tell you that even though I've been teaching in medicine for about 20 something years, I was not trained to be a teacher. I was actually trained to be a physician. I didn't go to school to be a teacher. But yet, if you would have asked me or any of my colleagues if I was a good teacher, what do you think I'd say? Of course I am. Don't you know what medical school I went to? Look at how many grants I have. Look at all the publications. Oh, and by the way, look at all the feedback I get from my students. Well, is the feedback really whether or not I'm effective, or is the feedback actually more about a popularity contest? Because maybe I got a good sense of humor, right? Or maybe I'm just fun and I lecture when I lecture. It like all that stuff is garbage. And so I decided to go back to school. And I am now a 4th year doctoral student in the School of Education. And REAL is actually my attempt to start collecting data so that I can actually do a study for my intervention, right? And so I'm not going to use your names or any of that kind of stuff, but my intervention, the study that I'm doing is to improve medical educators or medical faculty, because I don't believe they're really educators, medical faculty's data-driven decision-making, right? So, no, I won't be using anybody's names, so sorry, Charity, but I appreciate it. So, my data is actually not focused on students. It's actually focused on faculty and whether or not I can improve their data-driven decision-making. Because you are now in medicine and you're going to be expected to do evidence-based medicine, right? If you don't, you get sued and patients die. That's why we do evidence-based medicine. We have to know the literature, we have to know the evidence, we have to practice based on the evidence that's out there. Well, how come we're not doing evidence-based education? And so that's what I did. I decided to go back and go to school, and then I found that I wanted to improve medical educators, basically evidence-based education, but I had no data to do that. And so I started building this platform. And one of the most frustrating things for me was to realize that students are paying for tuition, 15, 20 grand a semester. And then on top of that, they have to pay $300 to $500 a semester for these stupid Q banks, right? But I use the Q banks. I don't call them stupid because they're not useful. They're absolutely useful. But they're extremely expensive on top of your tuition, and your educator, your facilitator has no access to your data on how you're doing in those platforms. So therefore, I can't help you. I can't log in to UWorld or RX or Amboss or Lecturio or Osmosis and to say, what is so-and-so's lowest performing learning objectives, or what's the topic that is challenging them? So I can help them as a small group facilitator. Or if I'm in a lecture on cell biology, can I change my lecture based on how the entire cohort of students is struggling or is challenged by certain topics? These are the data that I want to try to gather. So that's how Real started. Real started with this ability for students to get free access to a QBank, and then me start to look at trends of what topics are they struggling with, and then give that data to the educators and improve how they're teaching, improve what they're doing in their small groups. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And so the company that I've actually started, my goal is that students no longer pay for QBanks. I don't want to put them out of business. I want to put Blackboard out of business. Because what I believe is a QBank should be embedded into Blackboard. And because the school already pays for Blackboard and it's built into your tuition costs, you no longer have to pay anything more. Your tuition should not go up. But yet, if that QBank is built in with lectures and all that kind of stuff, then what I can do is I can start using that data to try to help faculty, try to help students, try to help the school to get better. And so that's what I'm trying to do with Real. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 3 semesters. I have some really interesting data. So if anyone's interested in taking a look at the data a little bit later, we can do that. I have it on the PowerPoint, but I'll get right to it. I'm going to share my screen. Uh-oh, that's not what I wanted to happen. I got to share the other screen. There we go. Can you guys see it now? Thumbs up? Or somebody say something?
Yes, we see it.
Sweet, thanks.
Yes.
All right, so this is me. I was a medical student. This is me in my first year at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. I will tell you that I was not the usual medical student at Johns Hopkins. I got really lucky. I got a 24 on my MCAT. I don't know what that is now in the new score, but I'm telling you, it is the worst MCAT score ever at Hopkins. And I struggled in my first 2 years of medical school. Well, actually the first 18 months, because we did basic science in 18 months. And I'm telling you, it was rough. Where I excelled was when I took off on the wards. The wards is where I took off. Talking with patients, being with people, putting my hands on patients, doing physical exams, those kinds of things. That's where I excelled. But I'll tell you, the first 18 months of medical school was extremely difficult. I used we didn't have very many QBanks back then. All we had was Kaplan and UWorld. It was called USMLE World. Sorry, it was not called UWorld back then. Actually, I'll give you some history on stuff. UWorld was actually started by a pediatrician at Hopkins. He used to give us questions, our medical students, questions for free during his lectures on pediatric diseases. And he started to make money on it. And then he turned it into USMLE World, which is only focused on step 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, he blew up and started going over into nursing and so on and so forth, accounting, and now it's called UWorld. Osmosis. Osmosis is another platform built out of Hopkins. 2 second-year medical students actually dropped out of Hopkins Medical School and actually started Osmosis. So these QBanks have a big connection to the school that I used to attend. So my goal, my mission is to make Real free to medical students, that the schools should be buying it and it should be embedded in platforms that are already there. My focus is to use the science of learning. And I've learned about the science of learning through the last about 4.5, 5 years of doing my doctoral work. And I want to use the science of learning so that you guys can actually use some things like the Ebbinghaus curve and the stuff like that to learn more material faster. I also want to build in the ability to make this thing automated and personally adaptive to your needs and not others. A lot of the other platforms are very general. So when you log into RX or you log into Amboss or Lecturio or any of those other ones, they don't know the AUA curriculum. They have no idea. They don't have the learning objectives. They don't know what date the learning objectives were taught. And I believe that that is a hindrance. So that means when you actually set up a quiz, you might get questions that you have not been taught the learning objectives on. Even if you click biochemistry, if you click biochemistry and you do 40 questions, you might get clinical signs and symptoms that you've never seen before in a patient. You might get pharmacology, you might get microbiology, stuff that you haven't seen. So I've been building questions based on what first semesters at AUA are supposed to be excelling on and learning about. Okay, so that's what my focus is. It's not perfect. So what I need from you guys is I need your help to make it better. Complain, yell at me, tell me it's garbage, whatever. I got a thick skin. I'm happy about that. Send me comments. Let me know how to make it better. I have really good question writers from Michigan and Hopkins and Harvard and Duke, a bunch of people, but we're all busy. We make mistakes. Please let us know when we're making mistakes. Give us feedback. You can do that either direct email to me or in the platform itself. All right. So here's an organization that I am just not a fan of. Unfortunately, they own whether or not you can be a physician. The National Board of Medical Examiners is the organization that will dictate whether or not you pass the exam and you can become a physician. And if you notice here, this is right off their website. They employ 30 doctoral level psychometricians. What the heck is that? As well as several MDs. So this company is not run by physicians. This company is actually run by psychometrician, PhD level psychometricians. Psychometricians are people that go to school to learn how to assess, build assessments, build exams, and they have created the most difficult exam on the planet. I want to talk about these myths. I already mentioned how UWorld started and how osmosis started. Oftentimes I'm getting questions like, how do I know, or is real written like step one? Or is real written like CAS? Or is real this and that and the other? I'm here to tell you, every single one of these question banks started the exact same way, by hiring professionals that are medical educators to write questions for them. The National Board of Medical Examiners will sue anybody. They've sued schools. They will sue you personally if you copyright their material. They do not share their material. They will not give the board scores out. They don't give any of that. So if any of these companies are making the claim that they can improve your step score or that they can do an X bump in your step score, it's garbage. It is unsubstantiated by any data, and it is the marketing team that's working for these companies that is actually doing that. If you want, reach out to them and tell them to show you the data. I guarantee they can't produce it, because the NBME will not ever give out board scores. So how are they going to trend how you're doing in their platform to a board score that does not exist? You can't do it. The only way they would be able to do that is if they embedded these things into the schools, tracked students over 4 years in their schools, and be able to look at linear regressions over time using that. So be wary of the marketing data. Do I think these platforms are good? Yes. Do I think they're better than real? Probably. They've been around 20 years, some of them. They have way more material, way more iterations, and be able to do good. But I'm telling you, I'm catching up and I'm working to make it happen. All right. I think I covered a bunch of the myths. Also, these things aren't really efficient, right? Like I mentioned before, all the questions are not mapped to AUA's curriculum. So when you go in and take a question on biochemistry and you do 40 questions, timed quiz, how many of those questions are relevant for the material that you know, that you studied, the learning objectives that you were exposed to? Do they have clinical signs and symptoms that you've never even heard about because you haven't had much ICM, Intro to Clinical Medicine? Or do they have pathophysiology, microbiology, pharmacology, courses that you're not going to get until you're in next semester? Third semester, actually, so second year. And these platforms don't really adapt. They're starting to now, actually. They're starting to use things like space repetition and space retrieval practice. And I'll go into some of the science behind that. And honestly, these platforms aren't designed for first-year medical students. Most of these are designed for you passing the boards. All right, so here's some of the science. Anybody ever heard of the Ebbinghaus curve? So I've been teaching for a really long time, and it took me going back to school to learn about the Ebbinghaus curve. There's a guy named Ebbinghaus back in the day did a study. He was really interested in learning a language. I'm pretty sure it was Latin. Yeah, it was Latin. And so what he did was he took flashcards, and on the front of the flashcard, he put the Latin name, and on the back of the flashcard, he put the English translation. And he did, let's say, 50 flashcards. And he said, I'm going to study. And he studied them, I don't know for how long, but let's say for 2 hours. And at the end of that 2 hours, he felt like he knew the questions or the flashcards. So what he said was that he had 100% retention, 100% retention. And as time went by, it started to leave his memory. So this is the forgetting curve. Now, we often talk about the learning curve, which is actually the opposite. The more that you build a foundation, the more connections you can make to the next level. And so the more connections you can make, the faster you can learn. And so that's the learning curve. It goes exponentially up. The forgetting curve is how long does it actually take for me to forget? That was his thesis. So he did this, and what he found was that after 20 minutes, he forgot 42% of the information. So let me ask you, most of your undergrad was in what? Using lectures, right? 50-minute lectures. How good are lectures? If you're losing 42% of the information in 20 minutes, come on. This is why we're moving towards small group active learning. Universities aren't doing it yet because they're just a different animal, and professors are really stubborn. They don't really want to teach. They don't want to be educators. They actually just want to go do a lecture, drop a bomb, and then leave, right? So then he also found that after 24 hours, we had now forgotten about 67% of the information, and so on and so forth. So then what he did, he came in and he did a really interesting study the next time. He said, well, what if I do the exact same thing? I study my flashcards for 2 hours and I have 100% retention. That's the top of the red line at time 0. And then as that line decreases down to 24 hours, which means that what? We're now at 33%, right? So at 33%, the red line crosses the gray line at time 1. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to study those flashcards again for another 2 hours. And I'm now going to have 100% retention at day 1 of that same exact information. Now what happens? How long does it take for me to drop back down to the same time period where the red crosses the gray? If you look, it now takes up to just about 4 days. So doing this spaced retrieval practice or retrieval practice allows me to extend my memory. This study was the very first study ever shown that you can move information from short-term memory into long-term memory using experimental data. So when do you think this study was done? 2000?
10 years ago?
10 years ago? Would you flip out if I told you it was 1885? Yeah. Sucks, doesn't it? Tell me how many of your professors have ever taught you the Ebbinghaus curve? I never had anybody. This has been around for a long time. I mean, we're talking over 100 and something years. This study's been around. Only until like the last 15 years has it made a resurgence. And some cognitive scientist, Roddy Rudiger, out of a medical school in Missouri at Wash U, has started to use this information and is really starting to make a comeback.
Dr. Robinson?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you believe, like, you've heard of Anki, right?
Yep. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, so Anki kind of uses the same principle, and then you can set your time intervals, day intervals, and it measures how good you retain the information, correct?
Well, Danish, it sort of does, right? So Anki uses a space retrieval algorithm, just like Real does, but it uses self-reported data only.
Oh, understood.
Right? So when you do that flashcard, your job is to click on your confidence level of you knowing the front of that flashcard. That's the data that it's collecting. Do we lie to ourselves? Yeah, sometimes, right? Like, how good are we at being accurate about our confidence level? So what I did was, in the quizzes, I do a self-reported confidence level. And then I also use objective data, which is, did you get it right or did you get it wrong? And I use that data to be much more specific about how the algorithm works. I'm also doing this with the flashcards. The front of the flashcard in Real has the self-reported confidence level. And then the back of the flashcard actually has, did you get it right or did you get it wrong? Both of them are self-reported, but they give two slices of information. Number one, what's your confidence before? And then what's your self-reported accuracy after? I'm also collecting data on when you're at the quiz review page on Real, after you gave your confidence level on the front of Real, then you submitted all your quiz questions, then you get the data from which ones did you get right or wrong. Now you're on the quiz review page. You can then mark, why did you get it wrong? Did you get it wrong because you totally missed the concept? Did you get it wrong because you ran out of time? Like, all of those data points are data points that matter to give you a very personalized insight and progress of how to go through questions. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
All
Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, please.
Questions. Michael here.
Hey, Michael, what's happening?
So, hi, I'm doing all right. Sorry I joined late.
It's all good.
Lost track of time. So, what happens in a situation that you just explained when you retake the quiz? Does the algorithm put that into consideration again?
Yes.
Or it doesn't?
So this is where when we're talking about this right here, this is called retrieval practice, right? And so what Ebbinghaus did was he said at time 0, I'm going to study all my flashcards. I have 100% retention. I'm going to degrade my memory. At time 1, I'm going to study them again. I have 100% retention. My memory degrades. But what I've done now is I've taken a little bit more information from my short-term working memory and stuck it in my long-term memory. Now, the next time that I studied it, right, so that was at day 4. At day 4, he studied them again, and it went up to 100% retention, and then it degraded. But then a little bit more went from short-term to long-term memory. That is retrieval practice. My goal is can I build an algorithm that automatically works for your optimized maximum level of spaced retrieval, right? So for instance, if I'm doing biochemistry and I'm doing flashcards on biochemistry compared to somebody who is a biochemistry undergrad major, do you think their spaced retrieval practice time frame is different than mine, who's not a biochemistry undergrad major? The answer is yes. Because if I have more prior knowledge, more knowledge about biochemistry, when I actually do the flashcards, I'm going to be able to easily remember that, and my degrade curve is going to be much flatter than my curve, which I don't know that material, so it's going to be lost really quickly. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build in data points to try to figure out each single person that uses Real, what is their optimized algorithm in space retrieval practice given the different kinds of information that you're going to be studying. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yes, sir. So each time you are basically, the more times, it just kind of just like kind of talking about a IQ, but with this one, the more times you look at it as part of answering the question, the higher chances you are increasing your retention rate for the topic, basically.
That is correct, but I would like to even extend what you're saying. So it's not just looking at quiz questions. It is putting in effort. When you're on the quiz review page, it's about studying using the quiz review page, not just, oh, okay, I just read over the answers, I got them, I'm good, and moving on. Does that make sense?
I should, yeah, yes, sir. I should wrong choice of word. Yeah.
No, it's not a wrong choice of words. I just want to be very clear, because if you look at this page here, this is the topic that I really want to talk to people about. Roediger, you can see WashU University, the top left. He did an article called Test Enhanced Learning, and then he went on and did the power of testing memory and expanding retrieval practice and so on and so forth. And then Pan, just from UCLA, just put out this pre-testing versus post-testing, comparing the pedagogical benefit of errorful generation and retrieval practice. What the heck does all that mean, right? This was just done like 6 months ago, it was published. So let me ask you guys a question. Should you take a quiz before you study the material? Or should you study all the material first and then take the quiz?
The first one, absolutely. I think we should take a quiz first and then see where we're at and then study the material.
All right. Does anybody else agree or disagree?
I agree. And sometimes I'll do, like, if I'm reading a chapter, I'll go right to the back and I'll do, like, I'll read the summary first and then kind of go back to the beginning of the chapter. So
I don't.
So some people do, some people don't. What I'd like to do is, if I polled everybody and they were all honest, how many of you folks actually practice by doing what I didn't catch the other person's name, but I see Michelle right there, so I caught her name, that they actually do work before they study the material. Most folks will study, and then they will take quizzes. And if you ask professors, what do you think they're going to say? I challenge you, please ask your small group facilitator that exact question. Should I take a quiz before I study, or should I study all week and then take my quizzes on the weekend? I'll be interested to see what they say. So this new study out by Pan actually says what we should be doing is we should start with quiz questions and use the quiz review page. Now, it's painful. The reason why people don't like doing this is because they don't like getting things wrong. It doesn't feel good. And studying is all about how we feel. Sorry, you guys, it's not. It's just about effort. It's about putting in the effort to actually get this material into your memory. The evidence says that we should be not doing testing for assessment. What that means is we study all week, and then we take quizzes at the end of the week to either feel good because we got all the quiz questions right or feel bad because we got a bunch of them wrong. That is quizzing for assessment. What the literature actually says is we use test-enhanced learning. And that means we do interval quizzes throughout the entire week, either 1 or 2 every 1 or 2 days. And we build them into our study practices. So as the 2 ladies actually talked about, what we do is we maybe take a quiz before we study the material. We get really frustrated because we got a bunch of stuff wrong. But emotions are actually really good for learning. Let me ask you, how many times have you taken a quiz and you're on a question number 3, and you're down to 2? It's either A or B. I know it's A or B, but I can't figure out if it's A or B. And you mark A, and you get the quiz back, and it's B, and now you're pissed, and you're like, oh. And so how often are you going to forget question number 3? You don't, because the
Never.
emotion drives that. This emotion is important. It drives effort. So being frustrated like that is helpful. Now, I'm not saying you want to get so frustrated that you just go off the deep end, that you can't handle it, that you just throw your hands up and get a case of the F-its. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But healthy effort and a little bit of frustration drives learning. And so that is what test-enhanced learning is. Taking quizzes throughout the week. That's why Real is set up for you to get a quiz every single day. You might not be able to do all the questions every single day, but put in the effort to try to do what you can. And so the goal would be that you have your textbook open, you have the lecture and the PowerPoints open, you have whatever, the flashcards open, and that when you take a quiz or you do a bunch of questions, you're on the quiz review page, you now study the material that's on the quiz review page and incorporate it with the PowerPoint, incorporate it with your notes, incorporate it with the lecture, bring it all together as a study mechanism. That is test-enhanced learning. That is quizzing for learning rather than quizzing for assessment. Now, is there a time for you to do quizzing for assessment? The answer is absolutely yes. When you start preparing for a CAS exam, you have to learn the skills to get better at these crazy 150, 200 question long quizzes or exams that have crazy questions in them under timed conditions. There are skills around that. So you practice doing assessment stuff after you have built a good amount of foundational knowledge. Then you start looking back. What are the gaps that I have? And what skills do I need? I need to do 40 questions today under a timed condition to make sure that my speed is up there so that I'm ready for game day. So that is when we start using testing for assessment. It's about 3/4 of the way or a little bit less into a course. So when you're 3/4 of the way into foundations, you can continue to use the spaced learning quizzes that come to your email inbox, but you can also go to the quiz page in Real and you can select self quizzes. I'll go to that real quick. Can you guys see my Real page?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. Sorry, I just can't see from. All right, so go to my quizzes. create my own quiz. This allows you to, I'm going to call it Ray's quiz, choose foundations, and then I'm going to choose a bunch of questions. I mean, the number of questions are going to be 2. I can choose as many as I want. And then I create the quiz. And then it comes over here, and now I have a quiz. So this is quizzing for assessment. This allows you to build the skills under time conditions. This allows you to start to see the gaps in your information, right? But doing this after you have a foundation of knowledge is where you're supposed to be using testing for assessment. What the literature says is we do test enhanced learning or quizzing for learning during the early part of the semester or the course. All right. Other things that we can actually do, I don't know how much you guys have experience with this, but Real also has flashcards. Just like Anki, it runs on space retrieval practice, so all your flashcards are going to be changing. You can either create a new flashcard like this, allowing you to put in all the information. I can come down here and I can put in that stuff, right? I can put in images, and here's the back of the flashcard. But what we can do is, I'm going to put this in USODEC. I select the course that this new flashcard goes in, and based on the information, I open up the syllabus and I find out where in the syllabus that information is in. Well, I find the learning objective that relates to.
I want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Ray Robinson. I am a...
Somebody mute, please. Appreciate it. So the problem is they just changed the syllabus on me, you guys. So your syllabus now in Med 1 does not read Goal 4C or Goal 4 Learning Objective C. It now reads all numbers.
A partnership
right?
between
But
AUA
if you want,
and a question bank platform. It's new question
somebody
bank platform.
please mute. Thank you. So the 4C is the 4 in your learning in your goal on your syllabus, and then the C is going to be the 4th number in that learning objective. So these actually translate to that crazy nomenclature that's in your syllabus, but it's just a little different. I mean, let me see if I can find it. Can you guys see the syllabus?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So this is foundations. I forget what the FOI stands for, but foundation something or another. But this is goal 2, and this is learning objective 1. So in real, that would go for 2A, because A is the first letter, right? And if I want to look up 4C, then I just scroll down and I go to 4, and this would be A, B, hopefully there's a C and I didn't mess up. Oh, yep, and then C. So this would be the learning objective for 4C. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense.
Yes, definitely.
All right, cool. I appreciate it. So then I would choose a learning objective and I would create the flashcard, and then the flashcard is actually here. And unlike Anki, I mean, this is just like Anki, right? Here's the front of the flashcard. You choose your confidence level. You say how well you think you know the front of the flashcard. Here's the back of the flashcard, which is different than Anki or Anki. I don't know how you guys say it, but this is your accuracy level. Did I actually remember this and it was easy to remember? Was it really difficult? That kind of stuff. And so these are the data that actually go into the algorithm that are actually quite different. Another way for you to create flashcards is if you look here and you go into the quiz, you can actually click create a flashcard. Let's say that I'm really interested in heterochromatin, right? And so I want to create a flashcard. So I just click on that. It actually pauses the quiz, and you can put in heterochromatin and all that kind of stuff, right? And then when you go and at the end of the quiz and you get your quiz review page, you can also create flashcards here on the quiz review page. Also, if I got it incorrect, more data to go in to make it more specific for you is for you to indicate why you think you got the question incorrect. So all of these data go in there and they become more specific about your learning, about your topics. And then you can also create a flashcard here. Also, you can submit feedback. If you find a problem with the question or you just don't like the way it's written, click that, put what you don't like about it, let me know, and I will respond, I promise. The dashboard. So I don't know if you guys understand this, but all of that data is starting to be calculated here on your page. So as you do quizzes over time, they will show trends here on how your space learning quizzes go. They will also show you the number of auto-submitted quizzes. An auto-submitted quiz is when you set your quiz delivery time, you have 18 hours before the quiz auto-submits. The only reason why is because the algorithm needs data to reprioritize the questions based on your needs, based on your performance for the next day. So when you auto-submit, it's okay. It's not like you're not ever going to see those questions again, because if you auto-submit, that means you didn't do well on those questions. So the algorithm will reprioritize those questions and send them in quizzes that are coming up in the near future. So it's not like you'll ever miss out on questions. The goal would be that it's much more difficult to match your spaced retrieval, shrinking and expanding to improve your maximum memory if that's happening. Another thing that you can do is you can go to the lowest LOs, which means your lowest performing learning objectives. And on this page, if I want to look at any date, let's say from the start of when Reel went live to today, then I can actually look at what are my lowest performing learning objectives. And here you can see that I didn't do well on non-malfeasance, which most students don't do. And here is the learning objective 2B, which corresponds to, let's go up to 2B. Right here. Goal 2, second letter of the alphabet, 2B, 4 pillars of biomedical ethics. Oh, actually it should be 2A. They must have changed this one on me because here's non-malfeasance. So I got to change this now. So it's actually 2A, not 2B, but it's in the same ballpark, right? So you should be able to get close with that. So I need to mark that so I can change it. All right. And as you progress in the semester, when you start getting ready for CAS exams, the goal would be that you can come in here and you can say, I'm going to start from here and go all the way to where I'm at today. So start at the beginning of the semester all the way to where I'm at today and figure out what are my lowest performing learning objectives for the entire Foundations course. And then that will help you also be able to get more specific about learning objectives that you need to focus on, those kinds of things. What else do I have? Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. Yes, very good. Are you going to create an app for this anytime soon?
Haha, love it. So it was supposed to be out before the semester, Michael, so my apologies, but we had some hiccups. The dev team that was working on it kind of dropped the ball, and I had to get a whole new dev team, development team. And so they're currently working on it right now. Within the next month or so, maybe even less, if I can put a fire under their tush, we're gonna have the ability to do quizzes and flashcards only on the app, on the phone app. But that will be the very first round. We want to get that out so that at least you can get notifications. So if you have a quiz, and you can take the quiz and submit it, and you can do your flashcards with the space retrieval. It'll ping saying, hey, it's time for you to do flashcards, those kinds of things. That's coming up in the next 4 weeks or so.
I thought it was Billy's fault.
It's hard to hear you, Michael. Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I said I thought it was Billy's fault.
Oh, no, that one was my fault. I chose the wrong team.
Good for you. Are you able to pull flashcard, like existing flashcards, or can we only make our own?
Everybody wants to save time, right, Mark? Like, so let me show you on the flashcards. Now you guys are in small groups, right? So if you want, you can, or if you have anybody in Med 1 that you want to pair up with to build flashcard decks, all you have to do is click here and then put in their AUA email. You send them the flashcard deck and it'll show up right on their quiz deck, and you guys can start putting things together and share that deck. And you can share with anybody, then you can copy the deck here and save it off and then send it to somebody else if you want to be secret with somebody because you're, not happy with them, whatever it is. Like, I'll let you guys leave you up to it. We do have some decks from last semester. I'm going to review them to make sure that they're good. And then what the goal is that we're going to have people start publishing their decks to a AUA public forum, and you guys can start rating the decks, saying that they're good, whether they're not good, all of those things. And then people down the line will be able to pull those decks. We've been trying to work on an algorithm that will convert Anki decks into real decks, but there are some other priorities that have kind of hit the fan, like trying to get the mobile app out and things like that. So I do apologize. COVID has kind of put some difficulty on me because of a lot of this stuff, but hopefully that makes sense. Share away, build your flashcards. We're going to be making these things grow and grow and grow, and then make them publicly available for everybody to just grab, and then have kind of a social voting platform that people can, leave comments and all that kind of stuff.
Dr. Robinson, I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Nem.
Hi, Nem. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. So my question is, so I log into Real today. I didn't do it on the day that you sent the email out.
Okay.
I did it today, and when I click on the quizzes, when I click on the course, I see that, AUA Foundation 1 and AUA MSK 1 and other courses, but I don't see any learning objectives that you were mentioning. I mean, I can create my own quizzes, but I was wondering, is there any way that I can access to the questions without creating my own quiz yet?